You're listening to the Face Value Podcast, episode 191. Michael Pollan, Organic Food and Determinants of Health. Let's do it.
Perfect.
Hello, welcome to the Face Value Podcast. So excited to see you here. So excited to see you here. Well, I don't see you. I don't even hear you. You're hearing me. I'm so excited you're here. Thanks for being here and tuning in. My name is Vinny. If you've not listened to the podcast before, my pronouns are they, them. And today we're answering a listener question. I was like, oh, so good. I need to put this into a podcast. And we're talking about a food journalist or journalist in general called Michael Pollan. If you've not heard of him, don't worry. I'll give you the goss. And also talking about organic food and determinants of health. My voice sounds very deep and sexy at the moment. I said that to my friend and he was like, no, you just sound sick. I just got off a week of feeling sick. So, yeah. It's not COVID, thankfully. By the way, did you know if you test for COVID on day one of symptoms, there's something like a 75% chance that you'll get a false negative. And then day two, it's slightly lower. But you have to test multiple times during your symptoms and you might not even get the correct positive result. So anyway, I tested 3 times throughout my symptoms and it's not COVID, but still, I'm sick. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. If you like the show and you want to support it, then you can go to Ko-fi.com/FierceFatty, be in the show notes. If you want to buy me a coffee or whatever, you don't have to. I'm not the boss of you. Let's listen to this question from Brittany. Brittany asks, I have a question that I'd love your thoughts on, or maybe it could be a good podcast topic. Yes, it is, Brittany.
Look.
I'm well aware that social determinants of health have a huge impact on our health and bodies, and that we need major systemic changes so that everyone has the same access to food, healthcare, less stressful lives free from discrimination, jobs that allow time to care for ourselves, and all the other things that make, quote, being healthy so very difficult. I'm trying to do my part to help dismantle all those systemic problems, but very few of them actually apply to me. I'm a white, cis, upper middle class woman who has access to good healthcare and time in my schedule to do the things that are in my control. I know it isn't as simple as just doing all the right things, but at the same time, I'm still fat and I have a couple of the, quote, lifestyle diseases that get blamed on the O word. Much of the messaging around social determinants of health comes across as, quote, you don't have to blame yourself for being, quote, unhealthy if you don't have access to organic foods, etc. But I do have access to organic foods, etc. How do I reconcile this? This came up after a discussion where someone I know who is thin, white, cis man read Michael Pollan. And the message he took away from the book was, I can see that he's elitist and unrealistic if you aren't in the position he's in, but we are. So doesn't that mean we should do what he says? Other than pointing out how that reeks of privilege and arguing that if he has the extra time and money to buy all organic food and pay for fancy workouts, he could do slightly fewer of those things and funnel money into organizations that are trying to make sure everyone has that opportunity. I didn't know exactly how to counter his argument that if none of the social determinants of health are damaging to apply to you, you should be healthy. Is he right? Is it possible to perfect your health if you don't have to battle with so many of the things that most people do have to battle? I recognize that even asking this question points out my privilege too, but I would love to be able to educate the people in my life who don't quite see how lucky they are and how nuanced this topic it is. I love your work and it has helped me so much in my journey. I would appreciate hearing your perspective on all this if you have the time, energy, bandwidth to weigh in. Thanks, Brittany. Well, thank you, Brittany, for such an amazing question. And you know what? When you said Michael Pollan, my first thought was that other Michael that's from the UK. What was his name? He died recently in a kind of weird accident in Greece or something where he went out walking and then he died from the heat. Michael Michael, what was his name? I know British people are like, his name's this. Michael Mosley. That was Michael Mosley is kind of was the British answer to Dr. Oz, kind of fear-mongering, anti-fat, diet culture doctor who is not a doctor in nutrition or has any idea about it, and hated fat people. And anyway, so I thought that was Michael Mosley we were talking about, but it's Michael Pollan, who is an American person who, after me looking into him, is not far off from this idea of, he doesn't have that trashy aura of like, this is obviously trashy, bad journalism. Michael Mosley did have that kind of trashy element, whereas Michael Pollan, it's more difficult to pull out the BS. It doesn't have books like Lose 50 Pounds in 3 minutes. Michael Pollan is more of a serious journalist. So I can see why it's difficult to pull out the BS. So first off, I just want to look into like who Michael Pollan is, and just did a little bit of a Google Michael Pollan website. And one of the first things on his website is a advert for his masterclass. So the brand masterclass where they get celebrities to do a lesson on how to, I don't know, Oprah would do a lesson on how to be like Oprah or whatever, or whatever the person's expertise are. So he has one, and so it's a short advert, and I watched it. The first thing that he says, she wrote down word for word everything he said in this advert. Food companies don't want to satisfy you, they want to addict you. We have to resist that. So I went in and I was like, I don't really know who this Michael Pollan is. Is he a diet culture schlepper or what? As soon as I heard that one sentence, I was like, ding, 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 ding. Oh, Michael. So food companies want to addict you. So first off, he's saying that food addiction is a thing. And food companies want to make their food delicious, right? Obviously. Food companies are not like, okay, everyone, they're in the board meeting. They're like, all right, so girlies, how do we make our food taste not as good? Let's think about it. What flavors can we take out? Okay. No, obviously food companies want their food to taste good. So anyway, but they're not. I doubt that they're in, their quarterly meetings being like, how many addicts have we got this month? Come on, let's see. What quarter? How many more addictions do we have to our food? No. So food addiction, I've got a whole episode on it. Food addiction is not real. The reason why we know that food addiction is not real is if you look at the studies that show that we have a reaction in our brain when we have food or sugar, it's the same types of reactions that we'd have if we saw a picture of a puppy or hugged a friend, or, if we're eating things or experience pleasurable things, those centers are going to be lighting up in our brain. The studies they've done were on rats, not on humans. And if you think about if something is addicting, what happens if you have more access to that, or you want more access to the thing, and you feel obsessed, and so it's understandable to think, we're addicted to this thing. But with food, if you increase the access, those addiction sensations and feelings disappear. The more access you are granted to that thing, food, sugar, whatever it is. Whereas with something that is actually addictive, those feelings of addiction, because they are actually addictive, don't go away. They increase, right? It's just like a spiral. So already we're off to a bad start here, Mike. We're off to a bad start. The next line he says, this class is not about learning some short-term new diet. Now, does this sound familiar to you? How many diets have said, we are not a diet, babe. Okay, listen, we're not like those nasty fad diets. We're the real deal. This is a lifestyle change. What's the next line he says? This is really about a sustainable way of eating long term. Ding, 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 lifestyle change. We should have like a bingo of, is this a diet? A bingo card of all the things that are going to say, this is a lifestyle change, this is not a diet, the other things don't work, but we work. We allow you to eat all foods. We don't like shame. He said all of them. Next he says, I've written about agriculture, nutrition, cooking, and this is everything I know about food. Okay, great. He's a journalist, so he's written books about those things. Does that make him a nutritionist? No, it doesn't. The best wisdom we have, he says, can be reduced to 7 words. Okay, what are those 7 words? Eat food. Oh, okay. Yeah, love it. Not too much. No. Mostly plants. Oh dear. Is this the best wisdom that we have? Michael, I don't think so. Michael. The best wisdom is this is the best wisdom around food. Eat food, but not too much, and mostly plants. This sounds like innocuous. And by the way, I should have given a trigger warning at the beginning. We're going to be talking about this food bullshit, right? So this is not feeling good, and you don't want to be exposed to these messages, even though I am going through and telling you why they're bullshit. If you don't want to be exposed, don't listen to the rest of the episode. I'll put a trigger warning on the show notes, so if it's not feeling good, yeah, don't listen, because this stuff is really harmful, honestly. So eat food. This is so easy to be like, this is reasonable. Obviously, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. He's the way that what he's talking about is like, this is revolutionary stuff. Like, this has not been said to us for decades and decades and decades. And the reporting that he does, I'll show you in a second, but it's not supported. It's supported by anecdotal evidence from what I can see so far. So this is the best wisdom we have can be reduced to 7 words. It might as well read, the best and wisdom we have to help you trigger disordered eating. Eat food, not too much. Eat plants, mostly plants. Now, there's nothing wrong with eating plants. As you may know, I was vegetarian for like 7-8 years, and then I started slowly eating meat, and that happened a couple of years ago, and still don't eat that much meat for ethical reasons, and I'm just not that interested in meat. So I'm not anti being a vegetarian or vegan or whatever. However, we know that a lot of people are using vegetarianism, veganism, or that some people will say you should say plant-based. I think plant-based is more the movement, or maybe vegetarianism is more the movement. Anyway, a lot of people do use that as a way of restricting, and a way of restricting without getting called in for maybe being in an eating disorder or engaging in disordered eating, because there's an ethical component. And absolutely, you can be a vegetarian or vegan and not be disordered eater, or have an eating disorder. Absolutely. And also you can be a vegetarian or vegan and also have an eating disorder. And sometimes it might be a good way to hide disordered eating under the ethics. So it's kind of a complicated story. A lot of people say, well, if you're vegetarian or vegan, 100% you have an eating disorder. I don't believe that at all. Obviously, as someone who was vegetarian for many years, and also probably did feel a huge sense of superiority. Did feel a huge sense of superiority of like, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm healthy. And that's bullshit. That's healthism. And is it true? No, because I have different health conditions, which hasn't changed because I do or do not eat meat. But saying that too, eating plants and vegetables is not a bad thing unless you're becoming obsessed with it, right? Unless it's becoming a disordered eating disorder. So anyway, the words on the screen say, learn to eat wisely. So, and then he's like, join the masterclass, blah, blah, blah. Bye. Thanks, babes. So all of this seems very reasonable, doesn't it? This is why we have to be very, very discerning with listening to these types of messages, because it's easy to be like, okay, Mr. Michael, You sounding like, this sounds all reasonable. Yeah, I want to get behind supporting, eating, I don't know, well, or whatever it is that's drawing you to him. But then we kind of scratch the surface a little bit, and it's, for me, red flag central. So you can go to the masterclass thing and you can read this transcripts from or you can probably watch the videos too, but I was looking at the transcripts just for a little looky look to see what came up. And so the first one from lesson 2, the lesson 2 is rethink your relationship with food. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, let's check this out. So basically, let me read this first, the intro. The Western diet is a term that nutritionists used to describe basically the way that we eat. And when I say we, I mean people in America, but also now increasingly people all over the world. It's characterized by lots of sugar. Oh, this is just so fucking triggering. Sugar, refined flours, oil, cooking oil, vegetable oil, lots of meat and very little whole grain, very little fruits and vegetables. Is it? What's the evidence we have here? There's no links to studies. And okay, say if every single American eats lots of sugar, lots of flour, lots of oil, whatever, what does that mean? What does that mean? And well, he tells us. And that way of eating is closely associated with, no coincidence, the Western diseases. A term also coined by nutritionists. What are the Western diseases? Okay, put your bets. What are the Western diseases that Michael is talking about? Place your bets. Okay, have you placed your bets? These are, word, really? Type 2 diabetes. Several types of cancer that are linked to diet and cardiovascular disease, which includes stroke. Oh, for fuck's sake, what a load of bullshit. What a load of bullshit. Well, first off, word isn't a disease. Type 2 diabetes is almost exclusively a genetic condition. People who happen to be racialized are higher risk of getting type 2 diabetes, not because of their diet or what they do is genetic. You can't eat your way into getting cancer. So it's just such a load of dog shit. And this is not new stuff. This is the same old diet culture bullshit that we've been hearing for decades, being repackaged into slightly less egregiously harmful wording on the outside, but then going straight in. Americans are fat, and it's because we as in him, are saying that Americans are eating too much sugar or whatever it is, meat or whatever. Okay, Michael. So the next module that I looked at I was like, okay, well, let's see what he says about not too much. Okay, so one of the modules is called Eat and Not Too Much. Not Too Much. So he starts off with, I want to say that eating disorders of all kind are a serious concern and anyone dealing with them should seek medical support. But here, I want to focus on overeating. You know what? It's kind of like, the smile with the dagger to the side, like, I'm your friend, but listen up here, you fat losers, O-word is a very big public concern today in many countries. And then he goes, just more bullshit. Increases your risk for type 2 diabetes, for COVID, for a host of chronic diseases. Okay, so we've done many episodes about these types of things. We even did one for COVID. So for COVID, what happened? What turned out? Okay, so it increases your risk for COVID, which is absolute bullshit. What he's trying to say is it increases risk of adverse outcomes for COVID, is what he's trying to say, which is also coated in a lot of bullshit. So with COVID, if you want to go to Hayes Health Sheets, Haes, if any of these things are triggering you and you want to learn like the DL on the real deal behind what's going on with diseases or conditions associated with fatness. And again, associated is a huge word. We do not have the evidence to show that having more adipose tissue on your body causes these conditions. So anyway, so with COVID, what we found was so we rewind a little bit. H1N1, bird flu. There was a big study to show that being fat meant that you had worse outcomes if you got a H1N1. They did then a analysis and looked at why could that be? Is it because fat people are just, so unhealthy that, we just die left, right and center? Or could something else be going on? Surprise, fucking surprise. What was going on is that the healthcare providers were biased in their treatment of fat folks. Fat people were getting worse treatment. They were getting put on ventilation later. They were basically experiencing poor health outcomes because of the biased treatment from the healthcare provider. In places where fat people got equal access to people with smaller bodies, the outcome was the same, if not better, than people in smaller bodies. And that's what we found with COVID as well. Because, all of this fear-mongering, fat people are more at risk, and it's because of the fear-mongering that tells us that fat people are, have worse outcomes. And then, healthcare providers obviously have that message that fat people have worse outcomes. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So just a little look at his course is full of total old snooze fest, boring bullshit. I looked at, he's got many books. One of his books is called In Defense of Food. Actually, that's one of his shows, which it's a book that was made into a show. He has a show, Food Inc. You might have seen it on Netflix. I hope you never watch it. I didn't watch it, but it's just filled with a lot of diet culture. So a synopsis of this documentary, which is a book, In Defense of Food. If I just saw a title, In Defense of Food, I'd be like, okay, what's this about? Are you going to be like, listen, eat some food, it's great? No. In Defense of Food, the PBS documentary based on the book, takes viewers on a fascinating journey to answer the question, what should I eat to be healthy? Cutting through confusion and busting myths and misconceptions, the film shows how common sense, old-fashioned wisdom can help us rediscover the pleasures of eating and avoid the chronic diseases so often associated with the modern diet. How are we still talking about this stuff? Michael Pollan's journey of discovery takes him from the plains of Tanzania, where one of the world's last remaining tribes of hunter-gatherers still eats the way our ancestors did, to Loma Linda, California, where a group of Seventh-day Adventist vegetarians live longer than almost anyone else on Earth. Listen, I hope you're spotting this when I'm reading this. This is popping up to you. This group of people live longer than anyone else on Earth. This group of people eat the last hunter-gatherers. So because someone is a hunter-gatherer, I don't know what's assumed, that they are healthier or they have less disease or they live longer, but they've said it for the group of vegetarians. They live longer than almost anywhere else on Earth. The basic thing that should be popping up here is, anything else going on? Anything else that's going on with this group of Seventh-day Adventist vegetarians? Is it just vegetarianism that means that they live longer than anyone else on Earth? How many people are in this group? Is it just a handful of people? How many of them are related? What else is going on in their lives? Do they happen to be white, well educated, with access to healthcare? Are they privileged in other ways? What else is going on? Oh, definitely, it's like they're vegetarian. It's vegetarianism, definitely. Along the way, he shows how a combination of faulty nutrition science and deceptive marketing practices have encouraged us to replace real food. What the fuck is real food? With scientifically engineered food-like substances. Oh, fuck off. Food-like substances? What are you fucking talking about? Is it food? Can you eat it? Is it going to give you nutrition, pleasure? Is it going to satiate you? Is it going to poison you? If you can eat it, it's food. Food-like substances. And just because something is engineered doesn't mean that it's not real. Honestly. And he explains why the solution for our dietary woes, is in fact remarkably simple. Of course it is. It's so simple. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So simple. Oh my goodness. If only we all listened to Michael Pollan, we would be thin and healthy. Anyway, so that's Michael Pollan. And actually, I remembered that I had listened to something that he was in before, because he'd written a book on psychedelics. And so I was listening to a show on YouTube where he was talking about psychedelics and stuff. And that kind of light entertainment thing of, okay, this is a journalist. He's kind of bringing together stories to kind of create this narrative that is interesting to us. And so, psychedelics, I'm interested in psychedelics in regards to healthcare. And also, probably it's a lot of overblown, is psychedelics going to cure everyone, and everyone, no one's going to have mental health problems anymore, and people who've got treatment resistant depression, everyone, they're going to have wonderful results and blah blah blah. Is it a lot of hype? Probably. Could it help some people? Probably. Who knows? But it's interesting, right? And it's a topic that people are curious about, and so that's why I watched his video. And he's presenting it in a way that's interesting because he's telling stories. Same with his book. So that's one of what he does, but the rest of his stuff is a lot about food. And so I understand this stuff is interesting. He's a journalist. He's a good writer. He's telling stories. So of course it's so easy to get swept up in that stuff of, well, he went to some tribe who are the last hunter-gatherers and this is what he found. So therefore, versus looking at actual evidence and studies and not boiling it down to, it's simple, we all know. We've heard that, we all know so many times. Okay, so that's Michael Pollan. Brittany also talks about the determinants of health. So the determinants of health, I've spoken about it in another podcast. I have a post on Instagram that goes into the determinants of health, but GoInvo, GoInvo.com. Search GoInvo and then determinants of health, and you'll get a really good visual of the determinants of health. So I want to go there and I'm going to talk to you about this. Okay, so GoInvo identified this gap. Oh, okay, so let me read the whole thing. Determinants of health. Health is more than medical care. 89% of health occurs outside of the clinical space through our genetics, behavior, environment, and social circumstances. These factors are known as the social determinants of health. Despite their importance, attempts to integrate the determinants into a single visualization has been limited. GoInvo identified this gap based on their extensive work as healthcare design studio and conducted a literature review of sources, World Health Organization and the Kaiser Family Foundation, and face-to-face interviews with public policy analysis, health, IT experts, and clinical professionals. Relying on their expertise of mapping complex systems within healthcare, GoInvo created a comprehensive open-source visualization of the social determinants of health. Okay, so this is work that they've been doing, taking information from 2017, 2018, etc. And so you can go and look at their methodology, and it's in Spanish too, and their references and blah blah blah. So basically, what we know as what makes up someone's health, what we know as in quotation marks, is, like Michael Pollan says, it's simple. Eat less, exercise more, maybe drink water, that's what we need to do. Turns out, who would have believed it? Who would have thought it? It's a little bit more complex than that. So we have individual behavior that makes up 36% of the determinants of health. Social circumstances make up 24%, genetics and biology 22%, medical care 11%, environment 7%. Okay, so individual behavior, well, that's the food we eat and how much we exercise, obviously. Well, no. Well, yes, in some ways, but it's not it's not like the 100% or 90% that we thought. It's things like psychological assets, so that's conscientiousness level, the self-efficacy, optimism level, life satisfaction level, cognitive function in late life, negative mood and affects, and that is stress level, hopelessness level, anxiety level, depression level. Other risk-related behavior, gun behavior, sexual activity, motor vehicle behavior. And then we have the categories of physical activity, sleep patterns, and diet patterns. Now, we're not breaking down in physical activity and diet patterns. They don't break down what that means. They do. They probably do. But in this overview, they've not broken it down. So they're not saying, okay, diet patterns. Exactly what Michael Pollan said. Only eat plant-based. Eat less. Whatever. So let's dive in a little bit more. So of this individual behavior, which is only 36%, it's broken down into those 6 categories, and diet and physical activity is one each. So that makes 3%. Okay. So 3%, and this is, by the way, this, you could say, okay, my sleep, my diet, my physical activity, my negative mood and affects, my blah, 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 it's all perfect. That does not mean that you're going to have perfect health outcomes. These are determinants. These are what we've seen in populations determines better health outcomes, but it's not a do ABC and you're never going to die, right? So just keep that in mind. So we've got 3%. But hang on, Michael Pollan says that, well, what does he say? I don't know if he says that if you eat these things and you're going to be healthy. Actually, no, this is like how to eat healthy food. But does that make up a huge portion of what our health outcomes are? No. So when we're thinking about health, we can think about, if we want to, food and physical activity, and it will be things like access to enough food, access to a reliable source of food, access to food that brings you joy, and access to things that are nutritionally dense and can support our health outcomes in whatever way that means. So for example, if you are allergic to shellfish, that you don't eat shellfish, right? Or if you are an epileptic child, that you might want to do the keto diet because that helps with that, right? So it's not just, did you eat a lettuce today, right? It's all of it is more complicated than that. And something that's going to be good for one person is going to be terrible for another person. So Michael Pollan saying this one thing, okay, this is, it's simple. It's simple. Is it, Michael? Is it simple? I don't know. Okay, so then when we're talking about health, we also need to think about all the other things. So individual behavior is 36%. What about social circumstances, 24%? And by the way, individual behavior, we also, I forgot to mention here, drug use. Did I forget to mention that? Anyway, individual behavior, when we think about psychological assets and negative mood and affects, is that something that we can change? For example, your stress level, your hopelessness level, your anxiety level, your depression level. So are those things that you can change? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. So that's individual behavior, which is also not necessarily things that we can change. So social circumstances. What is social circumstances? Gender identity, military service, sexual orientation, citizenship status, race and ethnicity, social status, occupation, language and literacy level, your income, your family income, your religious involvement, your culture and tradition, your history of incarceration, work conditions, discrimination, early childhood education, social connectedness, etc. Right? So we do not think about, when we say let's be healthy, we don't say, hey, maybe let's not engage in, maybe let's wear a seatbelt while we're driving, maybe let's become a citizen and we're going to be more healthy, maybe let's not be around guns and we'll be more healthy. Maybe, that's not how we talk about health, but these are, equal to diet and physical activity, right? So we have other things. Physical environment, that is 7%. So that's things like allergen, exposure to firearms, your location, pollution levels, is where you live walkable? Do you have a nice place to live? Are you exposed to carcinogens or lead? The water quality. Medical care is 11%. That is things like patient engagement, health literacy, quality of healthcare, access to healthcare, etc. And then genetics, we have body structure, body function, your chromosomes, your gender, your age, your bone density, your blood pressure, your nutritional status, your biochemical function, sensory function, strength, right? And that's, genetics that have given you those versus individual behaviors. So basically what I'm trying to say with that is complicated, right? It's complicated. Now, let's move to another thing that Brittany mentioned, organic food. And someone that I like listening to is Food Science Babe, which she's using that handle because there is someone called Food Babe who makes videos which is all, like, don't eat this because you're going to die. Those types of videos. And so she's called herself Food Science Babe to contradict the misinformation that Food Babe is giving out. Link to Food Science Babe in the show notes, but you can just Google Food Science Babe. And it's great because you'll have all of these wellness influencers who don't know anything going around the store being like, do not eat this thing because your eyeballs are gonna burn out of your head and you're gonna die, it's a carcinogen. And then Food Science Babe says, chill, it's not. And Food Science Babe, by the way, is a chemical engineer and food scientist. So it's her job. It's her job to do this stuff. And she's studied it. Anyway, so organic. So we talked about organic food. We've talked about organic food. Now, let's listen to what Food Science Babe says about the top 3 organic food misconceptions.
Here are the top 3 misconceptions about organic foods and organic farming. Number 1, organic uses pesticides. Most are naturally derived, but some synthetics are also allowed. Now, natural doesn't mean safer for humans or the environment either. Naturally derived pesticides have overlapping toxicities with synthetic pesticides, and in many cases, the natural ones can be less effective and more has to be used. The organic restrictions wouldn't allow for a synthetic pesticide even if it were the better option that would be safer and better for the environment. Number 2, organic food is not more nutritious than conventional food. There are a few large systematic reviews and meta-analyses that show that there is no meaningful nutritional difference between organic foods and conventional foods. Number 3, organic farming is not necessarily better for the environment and in many cases is worse. The main factor being that it's less efficient, takes up to 40% more land. It represents an ideological false dichotomy based on the appeal to nature fallacy.
Okay, so thank you, Food Science Babe, for explaining the science behind organic food. That it's a scam. Basically, it's a scam. I used to work for an organic food company, and they would talk about how we know that organic food is a scam. And when I say scam, it's basically rich white people want to have a food to make themselves feel superior and that they believe is more healthy. So if they want this food, we're going to charge them more for it and sell it and make money from them. Basically, right? If silly rich white people think that this is going to be more healthy for them, or it helps with the elite status, then let's give it to them. But we know it's bullshit, right? So because before I worked there, this is like 10 years ago. Before I worked there, I thought, organic food is probably better. I don't know, what's the harm? And when I started working there, I was like, oh, what? What the fuck? Okay. But also they did have a ton of they did believe a lot of other kind of really unhelpful bullshit around food. And they'd have things like the dirty dozen, like things like don't eat these foods, you have to eat these foods as organic. And it's like, what? But we know that it's bullshit. So anyway, it was kind of confusing. But organic food is not better. Organic food is basically, if you want to spend your money on it, it makes you feel good, then go for it. But, it's kind of like, the way I see it is, going to, a mystic, calling a phone line and talking to some mystic that's on TikTok. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about this woman that was exposed, and she would do like tarot card readings while doing a poo on the toilet, and people would complain, being like, we can hear her shitting while doing her readings. It was funny. I wish I could remember what it was so I can share the video with you, but it was really fucking funny. Anyway, and so, if you enjoy it, that's just the way I feel. If you enjoy it, fine, whatever. It's a bit of entertainment, but it's not real, right? It's not real. So let's go back to, we've got all of those things in place. Let's go back to what Brittany has asked. I'm well aware that social determinants of health have a huge impact on our health and bodies. Not necessarily. So if Brittany's talking about the social, the individual behavior, I'm thinking that Brittany's talking about individual behavior versus all of the social determinants of health. Thing is, huge reminder here, we could follow all of these, right? We could be, have perfect mental health. We could never use any type of drugs. We could get 8 hours of sleep or however much sleep you need. We could only ever eat, quote, perfect food or work out in the perfect way that's perfect for our body. We could always have safer sex. We could never speed, right? These are all individual behaviors. We could also be white and cis and heterosexual and have the perfect childhood and never experience any type of discrimination and never have any genetic conditions. We could never have exposure to locations that are not ideal. We could have perfect patient engagement. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have poor health outcomes. It just doesn't work like that. We're all going to die, right? It just means that you might have better health outcomes, but you might not. You might do all the, quote, good things and still be like, oh shit, I've got this debilitating condition or disease or whatever, right? Okay, so I'm well aware that social determinants of health have a huge impact on our health and our bodies, and that we need major systemic changes, yes, so that everyone has the same access to food, yes, healthcare, less stressful life, yeah, so that's all great. So yes, all of that. It would help. It's not the thing that's going to solve any poor health outcomes. I'm trying to do my part to help dismantle all those systems, but very few of them actually apply to me. Is that true? I'm going to make an assumption that Brittany is a woman. So does that mean that Brittany's never experienced discrimination? I'm pretty sure that you have. Now, in Brittany's life, did Brittany have a perfect childhood? Has every work place that Brittany's been in was fantastic? Does Brittany have social connectedness? Is Brittany a citizen? Has Brittany ever engaged in sexual activity? Does Brittany have genetics passed down from the genes that were passed down? Yes. Does Brittany have a body that ages? Yes. Does I'm laughing. It's like, yes, does I mean no to all of it, like no, maybe not. Is Brittany living in the best location ever with access to vocational training and education opportunities and public space quality and carcinogen exposure and high air quality and ever been exposed to tobacco? And no, I mean, like, just because someone has privilege in some areas does not mean that you have privilege in all areas. And so just being white or cisgender or straight does not mean that you're going to have perfect health, because obviously because white straight people die too and have poor health outcomes too. but, you know, it's better for us to not be exposed to these discrimination, right? Okay. So I'm a white, cis, upper middle class woman who's access to good healthcare, great, and time in my schedule to do the things that are in my control, which doesn't mean that you're going to be healthy. I know it's not as simple as doing all the right things, but at the same time, I'm still fat. Right. So health and weight are not the same thing, right? And obviously Brittany knows this. I'm still fat and have a couple of lifestyle diseases that get blamed on O word, which is, you know, exactly, get blamed on being fat. So we've got this jump of health is size, and size is ill health. Size is the reason why I have these, quote, lifestyle diseases, which are in quotation marks because Brittany knows that that's bullshit, right? Is my assumption. That people with smaller bodies can have any of these things that are associated with having a bigger body, and vice versa, right? So there's a kind of circle of health is in my control, and I'm fat, and fat equals poor health. And here's evidence: I have O-related health outcomes, poor health outcomes, and therefore I'm in control of my health and should do these things that make me have better health, but I don't, and the outcome is that I'm fat, and so I have this. So, you know, it's like a circle that goes around where something in here is not working, right? Maybe is it that health is not body size, that body size could be a predictor, not because of having extra adipose tissue, but because of all the things that fat people go through: diets, poor healthcare, and lack of evidence-based care. So anyway, continuing, much of the messaging around social determinants of health comes across as you don't have to blame yourself for being unhealthy if you don't have access to organic foods, etc. But I do have access to organic foods. How do I reconcile this? Well, because organic food is not going to make you more healthy. It's just a marketing thing, right? So if you have access, if you have access to everything, say if you're a multi-millionaire, you have all the time, money, everything, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because our bodies are going to do what they're going to do. You can reduce your risk in certain ways, but, you know, our bodies are going to do what they're going to do. It's like, you know, taking the vaccine, taking a COVID vaccine. It reduces my risk of getting COVID, the strain of COVID that I've, you know, the vaccine is covering, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get COVID, but I'm decided that I'm going to engage in taking vaccines because that takes off a little bit of risk, right? So when I got COVID in October, I wasn't like, oh, well, how could that possibly be? Because I've done the right things. It's just one of those things, right? And so you could have access to everything and it doesn't, you know, you could have wonderful health outcomes or not. You could have access to hardly anything and be, you know, in have a marginalized status in life and, you know, have everything against you and still be quote unquote healthy, whatever health is. So anyway, so this, so then Brittany goes on to talk about Michael Pollan and the thin cis man that says, I know he's elitist, but, you know, we are in the position that we can do things, so why don't we do as he says? Michael Pollan is a diet schlepper. Michael Pollan is an entertainer, a journalist that is not looking at, is not involved in studies and looking at meta-analysis, and he's looking at, so far what I can see, anecdotal data. Even if he was looking at studies that said 100% only eat plants and then you're going to be super healthy, that still is not helpful advice, because you are not ever going to be able to be 100% healthy. And who says that you personally only eating plants is going to be good for your health? Who says that? Who knows if you getting that advice is not going to turn it into some orthorexia spiral, into disordered eating, into being obsessed about food, into terrible mental health, and restriction, and just going on to the same diet culture cycle that many of us done for most of our lives. So why should we, why this person says, why don't we do as he says? Well, for many reasons. It could be really, really harmful to us. And why is it this one journalist is the arbiter of what is healthy? So Brittany says, I didn't know exactly how to counter his argument that if none of the social determinants are that damaging apply to you, you should be healthy. Is he right? No, he's not right. He's not right, because we have these unique bodies that do what they want to do. We can try and reduce risk, but still, you could be wearing a seatbelt and still get into an accident. You could be wearing a seatbelt and get in an accident and have a terrible outcome, but you're still going to wear the seatbelt if that works for you, right? So is it possible to perfect your health? No, sorry. If you don't have to battle so many of the things that most people do have to battle, no, sorry. You know what it's like? It's you know, when I'm doing DEI training and we talk about white privilege, what a lot of white people hear is that white privilege, that means that you have never struggled in life and that your life is wonderful and that you couldn't possibly have worked hard to get to where you are today. It doesn't mean that. It means that you just didn't have these extra hurdles in the way to get to where you are today. You still ran the race, right? You ran the race, and maybe there are a few hurdles along the way, but maybe the person next to you who doesn't have the same privilege that you have is running the same race but has extra hurdles to overcome, or maybe extra hurdles and also started later, or whatever it is. So you're still fucking running the race. And also, does that mean that if you were running the race and you have hurdles and you got to start first, doesn't mean you're going to win the race, does it? It means that you've got these privileges, but it doesn't mean that the outcome is determined. So just because you have these privileges, that it's just data, it's just information, it's just knowledge about what ways that you have it good in life, and also is not a guaranteed outcome or recipe. So basically, one, Michael Pollan is a journalist who is selling diet culture, anti-fatness, and outdated, bigoted views, and packaging them as brand new, sparkly insights that he's gathered and put into this package of authority, you know, as well. Thinking about Michael Pollan, he's a rich white guy. I don't know if he's I think he's cisgender. I don't know if he's straight, but anyway, he's got tons of privilege, right? He's got privilege and he's got influence. And he's like, it's easy. She said, it's simple. We know it's not, right? He is doing harm with this, the work that he's doing. And also, there's probably things in there that are true and that are entertaining and that are valuable, right? So we have to recognize as soon as we hear or see anything. So that quick Google I did of Michael Pollan, within 3 minutes, I was like, okay, I know what this guy's about. He's about diet culture, anti-fatness, boring, same old bullshit we've been hearing for decades. But they've done a good job of packaging it to not look like that. So you got to get your diet culture radar and be like, you know, what? Listen to that episode which I did, which was, let me tell you what it was. Episode 134, How to Decode Alarmist Fatphobic News Stories. So that one, How to Decode Alarmist Fatphobic News Stories, that goes into, okay, so they've got a study? Great. Well, how many people were in the study? Who was in the study? How long was the study? What was the results of the study? Because, you know, you see all these, and I guess this is not a news story, but this is media. We've got this media that says XYZ. Well, let's look under the surface. Let's pop the hood. Let's pop the bonnet and see what's actually under there. And basically, is it anecdotal evidence? And from what I was seeing from that was stories, you know, and stories make really good ways to convince people, because it sounds right. If you go to this Seventh-day Baptist, Adventist, whatever it was, and they're vegetarians and they live to 102, so therefore, you know, that's a great way to share information that makes it seem really compelling. but is it backed by data? And that's kind of the boring thing. Is like, is it backed by what else is going on? And so it's a great way for us to feel emotions and get us interested in things. And so we have to kind of do the boring work of, is that true? Is it backed by science? Is the science good? Is it reliable? Is it, can we replicate this? Because so much of it is just a load of dog shit, honestly. And so whenever I see a headline, someone sends, I won't go out and look for it, but people will send me being like, have you seen this? And I'll just, roll my eyes, because it'll be like, new thing makes people thin in 3 seconds. And you just know. Oh, it was a study that was done on fucking dust mites. And it turned out that if a dust mite lost weight if it was not fed food, and therefore you shouldn't eat food because the dust mite became thin one time in 1974. And, but it's a new study, and, and it's just laughable, really. So getting that kind of critical thinking of what really is the information. And so what's the harm of listening to Michael Pollan? What's the harm is that, who is he? Is he a dietitian? No. Is he someone who is able to look at studies and show information that is free from harm? Doesn't look like that's what he's doing. Does he have his own biases? Yes. Is he bought into diet culture and anti-fatness? Yes. So the harm is really quite evident, right? Why shouldn't we just listen to him? Because he's causing me harm, friend, is what I would say to him. But this is such a great question, because I think it's nuanced, right? This stuff is more difficult to spot nowadays, because these motherfuckers are getting smart. They know that we're tired of, hey, fatty, lose weight, you loser. Stop eating donuts. We know that that's bullshit, and we can spot that really easily. And so they're going to have to get smart. And that's what they've been doing. And so make sure that you stay safe out there. And so when you see any type of headline, just think, I wonder what's really behind the headline. And when you're feeling that sense of, oh my goodness, well, I'm doing it wrong. Clearly I'm doing it wrong because I'm fat and I have health conditions. And if you get that kind of, well, maybe this is true. He's saying that if you eat this thing, then it's going to hit your gut at this point, and it's, and making these statements like, we all know that being fat is bad, like you said, like, oh, Americans eat food, and so therefore they're fat, and therefore that's bad. Those types of statements. Is that true? Is it true? Could there be bias there? Yeah. So I'd say maybe don't read his stuff. And also as well, it was stressing about health. Stressing about health is not good for our health, right? And I know it's so hard, because we want to do everything we can to be alive for as long as possible. I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people want to be alive for a long time, and a lot of people are really focused on health, and so it's difficult when you hear these messages over and over again about what makes up health, and maybe you're not healthy, and maybe we're aging and our health is changing, and that's difficult as well. It's difficult. So, trying to take that shame and blame off yourself, if you can, try and do that. Try and do that, because, it's not good. It's not good for us. It's not good for us. Or maybe it works for you. Maybe you like that, If that works for you, go for it. Doesn't work for me. Okay, well, links to everything we've been talking about in the show notes. I was in Ireland for a couple of weeks, and my sister got married, and I was a bridesmaid, which is the gender neutral term for bridesmaid, and I did a speech, and people laughed, and so it made me improve my self-esteem. Yeah. What else have I got to tell you? Oh shit, yeah. Listen now. Listen. If you have a job, you work at an organisation, go get the Fat at Work report. It's out, okay? Listen up here, it's out. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. I did a webinar. You can watch the webinar replay for free, and the report is free, or if you want to, you can do a $3 donation or not. Well, it's up to you. You can just go to anywhere and find Fat at Work webinar. But I'm going to put it in the show notes, so you can watch the webinar, or you can get the report, or you can do both. whatever you want. It's really fucking good. It's really good, okay? It's good, okay? Okay, fat at work. Oh, and if you might not even know what I'm fucking talking about. Fat at work webinar. Basically, if you're not in the loop, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I surveyed 336 fat people and asked them about their experiences at work. It could have been you could have been one of the people that did the survey. If you did, thank you so much. You are an absolute superstar. And it turns out that 95.65% of fat people have reported experiencing anti-fatness in the workplace, which is a gargantuan, gigantic, enormous number, especially considering, depending on the workplace and the location, most people in our society live in, quote, plus size bodies or larger bodies. The data that we have is 67% of people in America are plus size, and that's talking about women, but also we know that most men are mostly plus size anyway. And as well, fat people are employed less than straight size people, and some organizations might not have that many fat people. But anyway, a lot of people are living in bigger bodies, and almost 100% of people in bigger bodies in the workplace have experienced anti-fat bias, which is not acceptable and really inappropriate. And so came up with the Weight Inclusive framework, which is Weight Inclusive Consulting framework. Weight Inclusive Consulting is my consulting side of my business, which I go and talk and consult with companies and do this work, work with organizations, training and whatnot. Anyway, what the fuck was I talking about? My brain just stopped working right then. Thanks, ADHD. No, must have been good, whatever I was talking about. Yeah, so most people are experiencing... Oh, yeah, Weight Inclusive Consulting Framework. So the framework for making a workplace safer for fat folks. The first step, which seems really just bananas, bananas, is providing basic amenities. And most workplaces are not even at this first step, which is somewhere to sit, clothes to wear, and a washroom that's accessible, and a workplace that doesn't have physical barriers in the way that people can't navigate. Basic stuff. Can you imagine? Ugh, yes you can. If you can imagine this stuff, if you're in a bigger body. Basic amenities. So anyway, in the webinar and the report goes through all of those steps and whatnot. So you've got that free. Go to the link in the bio to get that. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Thank you to Brittany for the excellent question. And don't listen. I'm always like, don't feel ashamed. Don't feel ashamed. In case I was like, being sassy and stuff, being like, this is bullshit. Doesn't mean that, you're not, you should have detected the bullshit. Obviously I do this as a job, right? And these motherfuckers are getting tricky. Okay. So, if you're, getting sucked into this bullshit, don't feel like you should not have, because it's really hard not to, because it's everywhere and it's insidious. All right, well, I'm gonna stop talking. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. Remember to stay fierce, fatty, and remember, you are worthy. You always were, and you always will be. Okay, bye. Tatty, bye.
Perfect.